ora, I'm Nadine Higgins and welcome to your personal finance podcast, The Prosperity Project. On this podcast, I'm on a mission to empower you financially. I am a columnist and a journalist, an investor, a financial advisor, and the mum of a toddler. But I do not claim to be the font of all knowledge. I'm still figuring it out too. And that's why I'll be bringing you the experts and mining their big brains for all the things you and I need to know every week. We've come a long way in terms of gender equality, but women still earn less, are less likely to invest. We retire with less, we fare worse in the workplace after having children, and considerably worse after a divorce. So we have a fair way to go yet. And we're going to focus on some financial tips specifically for women in a future episode. But I wanted to recognise International Women's Day a little differently in today's episode by featuring a story of resilience and, I think, hope. Emily Owens has gone from sleeping in her car to becoming an investment advisor at Advice First, helping others create a successful financial future in a field that is still dominated by men. Welcome to the Prosperity Project.
Thanks very much, Nadine.
I think you've had such a massive journey. I wondered if you could take us back to the beginning. Emily, a few decades ago, leaving home for the first time. Can you tell us a little bit about your circumstances?
Oh, sure, yes. I did have a bit of a difficult time as a teenager, like many. My parents had a difficult time with me as well, and that sort of resulted in a relationship breakdown, which meant that it was quite young that I left home. And so what happened next was I continued to go to school as a teenager, sitting school C at the time, and finding my way through the system and the challenges that faced me from there.
How on earth does someone in fifth form, or year 11 as it's called these days, manage to leave home and get by?
Yeah. It was quite unique. There weren't, other kids like me that I knew of. I, at first, was able to move in with family, which provided that stability and people I knew. But it wasn't too long after that evolved into me moving out of there and going flatting. I did have some support at school to connect me with the work and income system, and I did meet a fantastic caseworker who was able to help me to apply for an independent youth benefit and assuming an accommodation supplement at the time.
But that's an awful lot of adult financial responsibility to be taking on pretty young.
Yes. So I did get really good at filling out forms, memorising my bank account and IRD numbers and client numbers. So, yes, I think that it was a very stark introduction to adulthood and not an easy one, but in many ways easier than a lot of the issues that people face today with the cost of living crisis and the housing crisis that has gone on and on.
So did you manage to stick it out at school, or did it all get too hard? What happened to your education in the midst of everything else you were juggling?
I did manage to get through the sixth form, so I did manage to stick at school for quite some time, but then I wasn't too keen to hang around if I could get into higher education already. So there was an attempt to start a degree or a diploma at that early time, but that all did get too hard trying to navigate study and living a long way away from where I had to visit in person every day of the week in the centre of town to study. None of this remote learning
existed back then. So basic things like transport were an issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that didn't work out. Then it's about navigating the workforce. But I'm presuming, God, for want of a better term, you're on the bones of your butt, right? You're scraping together every dollar. How do you manage to get along to a job interview looking the part when you're super young, fresh out of school, and maybe not feeling your most confident?
Oh yeah, clothes shopping wasn't really a hobby that I had. I didn't have the money to go out to concerts and things like my friends were doing. So I was, really looking to see what support was out there. And I guess that's a point where I ran into the charity called Dress for Success. And what happened was when I was put in touch with them, they invited me in for what they called it a fitting appointment. And they provided me with some shoes, a couple of outfits, smart jacket, like a blazer, makes all the difference in job interviews, and a handbag and some nice, I think, some hand creams and things.
So was that a positive, empowering experience, or do you feel a sense of, oh gosh, I'm a charity case? Like, what are the emotions you're going through at that time?
I was going through a lot of emotions, just trying to sort of keep my head above water, really. Find my place in the world like every other teenager out there. Navigate friendships and relationships. So when I had the opportunity to go in, I grabbed it with both hands. I was curious to see what was in it for me. Very selfish. But I didn't spend a lot of time being selfish. I didn't have that luxury. So it was genuinely appreciated.
So you did manage to secure some work, but then you had another curveball in the form of a pregnancy.
Yeah. And it wasn't something I was intending to do. And when it happened, it was a massive shock. And so I had to work out what next. That sort of led me to the decision that I was committing to be a mum. And I thought, wow, how cool.
Well, that's great. But did you have support around you? Because obviously you'd been a bit estranged from your family. Did you have a supportive partner? Were there others in your life wrapping around you? Because it's a big moment in someone's life, becoming a parent.
Quite the opposite. I was really struggling to maintain the relationship with my child's father. It was really strained at times. It was difficult because he was not the kind of guy who was holding down a stable job. I couldn't rely on him to be supportive. In fact, there were times that it was very much the opposite, and at times violent and scary. I wasn't sure what was really happening. I didn't have other people to really relay that to. Yeah. And so, quite the opposite.
So you were kind of really going into this on your own, or there's someone there, but they're not necessarily a positive, supportive force.
Yeah, that's right. For example, when I was going into labour after my 9-month pregnancy, I didn't have that person at home that night or around. They had other plans that night. And so I was driving myself to hospital in labour.
Oh my gosh. And what's going through your head at that time? You're entirely on your own and about to bring a child into the world.
I hope my midwife is there.
Oh, I hope she was.
And we got her there, and mother-in-law did also come to support me. And so, yes, I did, and her daughters as well. So there were a few people there for me, and thank goodness so, because, what a scene for a 20-year-old to be going through at the time.
Just the idea of going through labour, which can be a scary experience, to then get behind the wheel. Was there some serious gripping of the steering wheel through the contractions?
I think it was more on the clutch pedal than the contractions.
Oh my gosh. And so I guess some of the difficulties intensify from there, right? Tell us about what happened just a few weeks later.
A few weeks later, my child's father was suddenly killed in a road accident. No one expects that. No one. There was no life insurance. There was very little sort of expectation that anything like that would happen. I thought my path was laid out. I thought it was harder to consider leaving the relationship than it was to sort of battle through and hope things get better. You know, I was forever the optimist.
I guess when you're that vulnerable and you feel like you don't have options, sometimes even a not safe option feels like the safer alternative. Staying somewhere where you don't feel safe versus going it completely alone. Is that a fair summary?
I really didn't know a lot of options. These days, I notice when I go to a medical appointment, one of the most common questions is, are you safe at home? And that didn't happen back then.
Yeah, so you just actually needed someone to ask. Yeah. So you're super vulnerable 5 weeks postpartum. How do you even navigate where to from there? That whatever income was coming from the partner, albeit unreliable, is gone. There's no life insurance. There's no partner. Did that feel like rock bottom?
It felt like my situation just got a whole lot simpler.
Really?
Absolutely. I now knew that I could pay my rent on time every week. I wasn't used to that.
So by that you mean you were going to make different decisions than the decisions that had been made for you?
Absolutely.
So then is that a moment of taking your power back?
Yeah. It was the doors were just swinging wide open with opportunity for me. And granted, you know, it's not something that happens often, but it happened in my situation. And as I said, my path, I thought, had been laid out and it didn't look that good.
Where are you living at this point in time? Do you have security of accommodation?
I did manage to get help in a Housing New Zealand house. I was able to actually spend the last few weeks of my pregnancy staying in a campground cabin because I had been warned that the initial Housing New Zealand house that was the only one available was right in the centre of unsafe neighbourhoods with sort of rival gangs either side of me. So I had a heads up that if I could perhaps wait a few more weeks that I would get a much safer neighbourhood. And so that's what I chose to do.
So the campground was the alternative to living in between two gang pads.
Yeah. Or a car, you know.
Yeah. Because you had spent time living in a car.
Yeah. On the odd occasion when it was really difficult to sort of find accommodation, then there was, the option of just sleeping in the car park, getting up in the morning and going to work.
But once you have a child, not so much.
Absolutely not, no. So, yes, being a mum, being on my own, then my priorities came pretty naturally. There was a lot of incentive there to make sure that my son got the best life he could have going forward.
We've got a lot more to talk about as to where things go to from here, and I know Emily's story has been pretty heavy so far, but I promise there are some positive things coming up after the break. Welcome back to the Prosperity Project. We're picking up with Emily Owens. She's an investment advisor, but she's sharing a story of resilience and hope from a past that has been troubled, but she has overcome so much. And we're getting to the point where she starts overcoming some of those difficult things. Look, from what you've described, you would be congratulated just for surviving, but you have done so much more than that. What I'm interested in is how. You've got a tiny wee baby. You're living in a Housing New Zealand house. You're, claiming the benefits you're entitled to, but you're dreaming of more. So how do you go about that?
Sure. Yes. One of the programs that I was enrolled in due to my situation, it did encourage studying just even the really basic topics like the residential tenancy agreements, all sorts of just really basic how-tos, and that sort of snowballed. It snowballed into different courses. It snowballed into bigger dreams. And so it was one foot in front of the other. I contacted my parents after some time of living down the line and agreed that I would be willing to sort of patch things up to the point where they could then come to the party and want to support me as well. And so I did get back into a good place with my parents, putting aside what we'd been through.
And so does that then allow you to spend some more time studying? Because I guess the complex nature of this is if you need to work, you need childcare. If you need to study, you need childcare. You also need income, though, to make the wheels turn. So how do all those things come together?
Yes. So absolutely, living with my family was a sacrifice. And many of you can probably see where I'm going with that. It's not easy a lot of the time, but it took sacrifice from both parties, all parties, brothers and sisters. But what ended up was that they had a fantastic relationship with my son, who was the first grandchild, who is, yes, grown up first among the many grandchildren that they have now. So the relationship that my son has built because of that sacrifice has been very rewarding.
And then in terms of your career, you end up heading down the finance path, working in a bank. Was that just what was available at the time? Was that a deliberate choice because of what you'd experienced in terms of financial insecurity? What was it?
One of the things that I considered when I was doing my degree was, when I started my business degree, was what sort of core subjects are you going to major in? And at first I thought I might go into the property side of things. I had a part-time job at a real estate agency on the front desk for a couple of hours, allowing me that opportunity to get into the workforce again. And then I started looking at more hours of work, but there was an opportunity to work evenings in the bank role on the call centre. And so that really opened up alternate hours where I would be able to work the childcare to my advantage.
And then did it light a fire? Did it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the finance major is what I settled on, and then my discussions with thousands and thousands of banking clients for many years really solidified my enjoyment of talking people through their products, listing alternatives, looking for whether what they're doing is good for them or not so good for them.
So where does that call centre job then lead you?
Sure, yeah. I had a number of client-facing and non-client-facing roles with the bank over 13 years. So I really got to know what products people used for what reason. And this was really good because I was able to raise my son as a single mum at the same time. I didn't always work evening hours. It did change over time. Sometimes we had weekends, sometimes it was weekdays. But yeah, as you become more involved in work, then you just adjust, into what you have available. And that really worked for me, raising my son at the time.
And were there any mentors or colleagues that you came across while working in the bank that kind of empowered you, or the reverse, I guess, because, the workplace can sometimes be a competitive place too.
Yes. I guess it did take a lot of, mental power to be a mum. And so for me, I wasn't absolutely career focused like a lot of the colleagues around me were at my age. But I've done things differently. We all have our own path. And so for me, I've sort of narrowed down what I do after my son's left home. And then there's colleagues like yourself who have got toddlers and it's a completely different path, but it works for me and it's worked for me. So there have been inspiring women along the way, right down to encouragement, or just offering me the opportunity to bring my child along with me so that I could babysit and earn money without needing to provide childcare at the same time. That's an example. And other women in the workforce, knowing that they were achieving a lot, really led to opening doors for me about what roles I could have in the future.
So being able to see other women nailing it or laying out the foundation allows you to kind of imagine yourself doing it.
Absolutely. And they can relate to you. I know now how tough it is to be a working mum. And so when colleagues feel a little bit distressed that they're not able to give 100% because they're looking after children, I would never hold that against them. You know, we're so much more accepting, I think, as a society these days that of the critical place women have in the workforce and their responsibilities at home.
Yeah, which is a lot, right?
Huge.
You combine the two and it's like 2 full-time jobs. I wonder, now in your role as an investment advisor, how does the journey you've had and the things you've overcome inform what you do?
I guess experience is the biggest thing I bring to the table. I have my own story to tell, but I also own these products just like the person next door who's in a completely different sort of financial position to me. And so it's really good for me to have seen all walks and talks of life come through my desk over the years and then really be able to relate back what advice I can give them in my role.
And has it really informed, I know you said, when your son's father passed, when your son was just 5 weeks old, that you thought, I'm always going to be able to pay my rent. Now it's going to be a priority. How else has it informed your financial decisions over the years? Have you tried to prioritise security, I guess, because you'd experienced such insecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything from budgeting and knowing, yes, I could pay for big holidays or concerts and choosing not to, and prioritising that future part of my financial world. So just like everyone, I need to save for retirement too, even if I'm not going to have millions and millions of dollars. I need to make sure that I make the most of now. I think it's also a story of encouragement for those who are struggling. If we can, get these basics like budgeting going, it builds confidence, understanding tenancy agreements, etc. It can really make all the difference in someone's world.
Which is an awesome thing to hear from an investment advisor, because so often it's about invest in this thing, chase this return, here's the risk, yada, yada. And I know all of that is really important. But sometimes I think we overlook the power of the basics.
Yeah, that's right. So there are some people who have more money than really they will need, and so their story is quite different to someone who might have a couple of $100,000 in KiwiSaver, and it might be that they might need to do a financial hardship application. So they're all relevant to my role. We do talk investments, and everyday people have KiwiSaver these days, and it's all relevant.
And I guess even if you're planning your retirement, knowing what your life costs is really useful, right? Because you want to know whether all that money you've saved will last the distance.
Yes. And sometimes just things hit the fan, and the position you thought you were in 1 minute is not at all the case anymore, for better or worse. And you might need to get some advice and pivot what you're doing.
What do you look back and think when you consider the journey that you've been on?
I really am always grateful for the fortunate experiences that I've had. It could have been a whole lot worse for me, and I sure haven't done everything right, and it did take me a long time to learn a few lessons, but I think that one foot in front of the other is the best thing to be doing, and having that optimism that things can be better.
What would you tell, there's that online trend at the moment of, I had coffee with my 19-year-old self or whatever. What would you tell young Emily?
I would absolutely tell her to keep going, keep looking for opportunities to make life better. That's just, it's a scary thought to think how tough things were, but they're tough for a lot of people. So just knowing that you're not alone, and to seek out places that can support you, even if it's in a small way.
And do you feel like you were really supported along the way? Did people show up for you? Did charities, organisations show up for you?
Absolutely. I was able to take advantage of the care of work and income. I know it's not coming across that way for a lot of people who struggle when they do approach work and income these days, but I was lucky to have that safety net myself. It helped me pay my rent a lot. It helped pay some of my uni fees. Other organisations helped to encourage education. Other organisations like the Dress for Success were able to literally give me some clothes that I could wear. And that really was amazing.
So we're doing this interview because Saturday, the 8th of March, is International Women's Day. What does that mean to you?
I really think about the women in my life and how important it is for me to give them hope about their financial situation and their financial questions, and just ensuring that if there are people that are needing help, that they know that they can send people my way for a chat.
Yeah, so you're kind of paying it forward. You feel like you've learned a lot, seen a lot, overcome a lot.
Yeah.
And others might take some inspiration from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get to listen to their stories too.
Yeah, it feels like you're imbued with a real sense of gratitude, even though you've had all these things you've had to overcome. Would that be a fair assessment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that puts a smile on my face every day.
So what advice would you give to someone out there who might be listening to this, feeling a bit lost, feeling like it's really hard to get ahead? You've already mentioned the cost of living and how difficult that is to manage. But you've been there and you've done that and you've got the T-shirt.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Google is your friend, and also other supportive women's groups, and even, a girlfriend that you just want to confide in and ask for some ideas. If life is getting tough, I didn't have Google to search when I was 19, the trade towers were coming down. It was a crazy time. But yeah, there weren't Facebook groups for mums that had recently lost spouses, or, even local coffee group Facebook groups. And so I'm sure there are people around in your community that are associated with charities, or just really know good spaces to get access to information. And Google search is also your friend, and very soon AI.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure that you make a fantastic advisor, because you've got this real sense of empathy, as well as having all the financial nous, and what a superpower that is. So thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Nadine. I hope you didn't need too many tissues this time round.
Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project. You can follow this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and please do chuck us a rating or a review while you're there. For more personal finance and business content, head to nzherald.co.nz, and please do feel free to get in touch with your questions and your stories. nadine.higgins at nzme.co.nz. A reminder, though, that this podcast is informational only, and nothing we say here should be considered personalised financial advice. But also remember that while listening to this podcast is hopefully going to be additive to your financial knowledge, and that is fantastic, knowing stuff doesn't create change. Doing stuff does. So what action are you going to take today to make your life more prosperous? My producer for this episode is Ethan Sills. Sound engineer is Richard Martin. I'm Nadine Higgins. Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project.